There we go.
There you are, your spotlit.
Hello. Oh, very, very good. How exciting are we this day? We are going into the 98th Pearl of Wisdom. If we can imagine, we are at 98. What an auspicious number. And this particular one is going to be about the 7 storehouses for us to replenish our ongoing ability to build our own capability and capacity to co-restore former glory. I love that in any situation or circumstance. And Mynoo is going to reveal the impact this has for what we can do to continuously regenerate the gifts emerging from the distinctive abilities that we have to restore ourselves. And so this is extremely important, I think, at this time, because being in the spring and sort of going into really, really creating something new. So many people I know, no matter what age they are, seem to be kind of saying, gosh, I've been doing whatever for so long, Groundhog Day. And now it's going to be, what are we going to do that is new? And so glorifying our abilities and what we've always had, our gifts that we've come to this place in our lives to have, and to then really refine and again glorify and emerge to something distinctive and new. I'm very, very excited about. So let's buckle up and get to our pen and paper. My pen is ready. My paper is ready. And I buckle up and get our pen and paper. My pen is ready. My paper is ready. And I buckle up and get our pen and paper. My pen is ready. My paper is ready. And I buckle up and get our pen and paper.
Okay.
So Mynoo, on your end, are you getting ready to jump in, or shall we chat with a little bit?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Very well. Everyone, most people who are are joining us tonight know Mynoo Maryel, but we love her so much, and she is a powerful, powerful master speaker and a person who just sort of brings in the most incredible information. And she was speaking at the UN today, so maybe she'll tell us a little bit about that. But she is a gifted gift to all of us. And Mynoo, I'm going to just let you jump in, and I'll at the end I'll do a little more chatting about who you are.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you so much for hosting. Catherine is doing another red carpet, I think. I think it's a pre-Cannes Film Festival event that she's at. So she's certainly, as we have seen her, evolved into a whole new career for herself. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Sunny, for standing in and hosting us today.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for what we are about to receive.
Thank you. And we are live on Facebook. So hello to all of our Facebook viewers also. So restore. I love the way the context was set for this particular Pearl of Wisdom, and the fact that it is the 98th Pearl of Wisdom. The 7 storehouses for you to replenish, and to do that on an ongoing way, to build up your own capacity to restore former glory in any situation or any circumstance. It was very powerful to realize that each one that I'm about to talk to you about, each one is in fact like a storehouse. And that's what you are replenishing as you work with that. And the impact of that directly is this return to former glory. So that, unrequitedness or any repentance or any regret that we may have, even when things are going really well, there's often that statement that I hear people talk about, their former glory. Whereas what we're talking about here actually literally restores that. So the first one, the first storehouse is radiance. So radiance, by itself, if I was to look at, well, what is radiance about? What kind of a storehouse is that? So radiance is happiness and beauty. Or it could be good health that you can see, it's very visible to you when you look at someone. And in fact, you just get struck by radiance of another person. You get struck by beauty. You start displaying that happiness. You are struck by someone radiating this good health. So radiance is a storehouse that you are going to replenish for yourself. So when I took that on, I thought, okay, this is cool. I'm going to work with storehouse radiance, happiness and beauty. And, I immediately went into, just like I suggest everyone to do, I immediately thought I'm going to actually look at this storehouse in a full spectrum way. I'm really going to examine everything that is going on in my life, everything that has ever gone on in my life. If I am to replenish this storehouse of radiance, of happiness, of beauty, of good health, then why not examine every area of my life, physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, and environmental. And I decided to do what I often ask people to do here, which is, just go back in, let's say 5-year chunks. I have a few decades to go through. So I just took it as 5-year chunks. And I just sat down and I said, okay, no rush, this is my radiance time segment. And I'm actually going to examine what has occurred in the last 5 years that has really enriched my happiness and my beauty and my health. Here I applied another nuance, which was, okay, what's occurred in my life? And then I also went into not only what has occurred in my life, but also who was around me when that did occur. And who or what would I see as possible triggers for enriching this happiness and beauty? So this way I was really getting to know, one, that there were things that had occurred that just naturally, the natural consequence was this was radiance, happiness and beauty, and good health. And I also saw that these people that I had identified in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, 15, 20 years, and so on, or these situations that I had identified who were possible triggers for enrichment of this happiness and beauty, basically meant I could work with those triggers. I could actually engage with those people and continue to multiply that. And I saw that I actually did that very proactively, very consciously. And really what it did was I saw that the last 3 years, from 2020 until now, had been a particularly rich and enriching time. It gave me an understanding of certain situations that might have been stressful. But when I was really looking at, okay, I spent the last 3 years where I was actually in one place for more than the usual length of time, and something new turned up. And I saw the time when I was living in Mumbai, Corona lockdowns had begun, and that, compelled me to offer what service I could offer, sitting there in my room. And that is what gave rise to these pearls of wisdom. And here we are, sharing the 98th pearl of wisdom. initially it was, okay, we'll just online, we'll come on, and whoever wants to come on can come on. And Catherine agreed to host me. And I started sharing whatever was happening in the context of there was so much unknown going on. And it began that way. And it literally opened up floodgates of a whole new level of depth and breadth in terms of wisdom that the divine chose to flow through me. And, we literally began these online sessions with navigating the unknown. Little did we realize that really what it was preparing me to do was to understand the new norm, the 10 commandments of the new norm. And these 10 commandments were actually nothing but the foundation of the new world as it was emerging, where uncertainty is certain, unknown is the known. Change is constant, take nothing for granted is a modus operandi, and so on. Not only did we cover the 10 commandments at a stretch, I actually learned how you deep dive into each one in pursuit of implementation. So we did a deep dive into each of the commandments. And once we learned to navigate the unknown, and it was like, wow, this is all really practical stuff. And there I was in my room, in my apartment. And I realized as I was looking through radiance, not only did it give me great happiness to actually uncover something pretty amazing that I was sharing, it was certainly, amplifying the repertoire of understanding of how to navigate this new space and be able to share it with confidence and with love and care with people, and do so week after week. I also became very connected to nature itself and felt so enriched by the choice of the apartment that I was living in. Because of course, nobody could go anywhere. And I got COVID in that first round. Though it was mostly asymptomatic, there was a little bit of symptoms that I had. I was in one place, and right outside my window ledge, downstairs, I was on the 25th floor, was this forest. And there was no sounds because everything was locked down. And I had this thing in my head that, I had to always, every year I was going to go to Bali for that one day when all of Bali would shut off, because I had experienced the richness of the sounds of nature. And lo and behold, it was happening right there. Day after day, month after month, week after week. I saw the forest transform, both in terms of its flora, the kind of plants and the colors of the flowers and the expanse of the blossoms that would take place. How the spring blossom was different than the monsoon blossoms. And how the terrain of the forest, because I could see it from like an aerial view, not only could I see different, flock of birds flying at particular times of day, I could also see animals. They were like tiny animals running across the forest. And it began with one or two here and there to actually collections of these coming together. I recognized what was giving me that happiness. The beauty was like amazing, but what was giving me happiness was seeing nature reclaim itself. And it's only in doing the radiance storehouse replenishment, I realized how amazing and acute my observation itself was. Because as I saw nature reclaiming itself, looking down at the forest, I saw it reflect in the sky, in the fluffy Simpson clouds that were there, in even the way the sunrise or the sunset was being reflected and refracted in the sky in front of me. And how the clouds, the shadow of the clouds on the trees below would shift from as the day progressed, and what effect it had on the living beings that were there in the forest. I was too far to hear the rustling of the leaves and stuff, but certainly the sounds of nature were very present and alive. Now, that whole experience, I would say, was like a 10 out of 10. So when I go back, okay, what else occurred in the last 5 years? What else occurred in the last 10 years? By the time I looked at the last 3, I had got plugged into the nuance of what I was actually tracking and realized that even though all that I was doing was looking back and observing what had occurred, I was in fact counting my blessings. In each acknowledgement, I couldn't help it but feel how blessed I was, feel that sense of gratitude. And what is the consequence of counting your blessings? The consequence of counting your blessings is the state of bliss. And it was bliss anchored. Bliss, amplified. The more I engage with the glory of nature itself. So here's something else that occurred. So when the last 3 years, I started literally, anchoring it. And it felt like a storehouse, filling up, filling up, filling up with a whole collection of my acknowledgements of what had occurred. That was radiant, that made me happier, really connect to beauty, made me feel healthier. And many of you here are part of the Beyond Meditation group, where I'm talking about the 124 trillion cells. So even though I went through COVID, and there was a lot of that COVID out there in the atmosphere, and lots of uncertainty that was having its own impact on people, I started discerning between, what's so and what may be false expectations appearing real, recognizing that that is what fear actually is. It's not real. It's just an expectation. It's definitely not what's so. Again, that nuanced understanding of fear provided a huge sense of relief and release. So as expectations started to rise, particularly when the lockdowns were expanding and, couldn't see an end in sight, I became very aware of the words I was using. So even like, well, I expected the metros to be open by now. Well, so what, What difference does my expectation actually make? It is what it is. But without being hurtful, it was useful to be able to really step back and see that it was my choice of engaging in, allowing myself to get engrossed in the meaning I might have given to something that occurred versus the fact of the matter. The only fact at that point was the lockdowns got extended yet again. That's it. Fear about the unknown was propelled by false expectations appearing real. It should have opened up by now. Well, what have we got to go by? Well, we don't really know. It's never happened before. So what's going to happen now? Well, that could be a question of curiosity versus a question about, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Well, who can help you with that? So it was really huge for me to observe at a nuance level that I was changing and shifting, keeping this, really restoring the former glory of my own presence, whilst I was observing nature return to its own former glory. Radiance enabled me to replenish the radiance storehouse. And that in itself had a direct consequence of building my own capability and capacity to restore former glory to myself, to the people that were there who may have been gripped by fear. It's not that I wasn't from time to time, but by simply being together and acknowledging it. Each one of us was starting to build our own capacity to restore former glory to ourselves in any situation. And the impact that was having was it was regenerating the experience of that former glory. And that in itself was so important as we were progressing and navigating our own way through the unknown, realizing and recognizing that we are actually going beyond survival. We are, in fact, focusing on thriving. And this co-thriving was playing out right there in front of my eyes. Collaborative co-creation of coexistence as I would look out into the forest. So let's look at the second storehouse. This is another one of those pearls of wisdom where I would say just go through it sequentially, one after another. The second storehouse is empathy. It is the empathy store. Empathy itself is where you show your ability to understand and share in the feelings of another. The ability to sense their emotions. It's often coupled with to be able to imagine what someone else may be thinking or feeling or experiencing at any point in time. Literally being able to put yourself in another's shoes and looking at the situation from that perspective. So the empathy store, right? Again, begin by simply using the method of acknowledgement, where you're examining last 5 years, last 10 years, last 20, wherever you're at. I like doing it in 5-year chunks. And given that the last 3 years was very, very unique and distinctive, then I look at the last 3 years quite separately. So last 3 years, then I go to the last 5 years. Because in what I shared with the radiant storehouse, it was quite evident just from there how different and nuanced it was, what was occurring in the last 3 years. When I looked at the empathy store and looked at the last 3 years, and looking at exactly what was occurring for all of us in the last 3 years, I saw that there was something very nuanced and nuancedly powerful about empathy, which is that in putting myself into other people's shoes as they were coming on here, we could have very easily dedicated for us Friday morning or Thursday evening, for those of you in the US sessions, just for people to ask questions. And the questions would have been about whatever it is that they were examining for themselves in that week or on that day, because there were so many things that were there. And yet, so I was able to put myself in their shoes, and I was following guidance, which was to always bring forth whatever wisdom chooses to be shared. And this wisdom was going to be timeless. And the questions that provided were done in the context of that wisdom. So the questions about the unknown were asked in the context of one's ability to navigate the unknown. So rather than a generic question answer session, which only would have been short-lived, and there would have been a stop, start, because the only context was to provide some form of solace at the time, during the times that we were going through, as opposed to really create an online training ground for people to master their own ability to use what I call as the miracle lens. And the first series that we did was about navigating the unknown. So when I did the deep dive, and this is me, I didn't know it at the time. I was just doing what I was guided to do. But now when I did the deep dive and looked with the benefit of hindsight in the context of the Restore Pearl of Wisdom, looking at replenishing the storehouse, I saw that I would literally get up and put myself in the shoes of every person that was going to join. By simply putting myself in the shoes of everyone that was joining, I was able to utilize the power tool of acknowledgement to remove that which didn't serve people, that was in their field. And that gave me the strength to run a session like this, but allow sufficient time for people to ask questions. People started submitting questions in advance. There's some very powerful questions as you go through the playlist from that time. There is a playlist on Navigating the Unknown, Journey Through the Seven Seas. And the power of the questions and the answers and the content itself that was choosing to flow through me at the time stemmed from the replenishment of the empathy store. So the way you would work with this for yourself is as you look back in time about what occurred for you in your life, where you saw empathy playing out. You might have seen someone else empathize very deeply and been touched by that, or you may have seen you empathizing, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Just look at what were the gifts that emerged from that. What impact did that have? And what became possible for you as you worked with that? To me, I saw that when I was looking at the empathy store, that it enriched stillness within me. I saw the power of stillness versus silence, and realized for this time, it was stillness that was called for. To bring that silence within, release that restlessness coming from false expectations appearing real, and really zoom in and return to my center. That came from the empathy store, distillation. And when we did the deep dive on uncertainty is certain, I was like, this is going to be really tough. Being acknowledging, going into acknowledging everything that is uncertain. How am I going to ever get out of it? And seriously, I am to share this with people and get them to do this for themselves. But I saw it was in this uncertainty certain where I understood acknowledgement to become this power tool, where by simply acknowledging with no agenda whatsoever or no big process involved, just simply acknowledging that which has taken place, acknowledging how it makes me feel, acknowledging where in my body I feel it. Just by simply doing that, the fears were dissolving. The anxiousness was releasing. And I was able to hold myself in my stillness. And I was able to share it with all of you. And there was a trust, and there was a camaraderie that we're all in this together that was becoming anchored. And as we were acknowledging, we were clearing out the fractures in our own field and becoming very, very powerful holographic presences, spreading our own vibrations far beyond our own presences. It began with me stepping into understanding where people are at, putting myself in their shoes, empathy. And when you all saw me engaging in it like this, each one of you did it in your own way. But as you go back and look at your own last 3 years, your own last 5, last 10, last 15, and so on, and you look at it with the very specific context and intention to replenish your empathy store, it comes with it, with its own unique set of beautiful gifts that you can operate from. And you can then acknowledge those gifts also. Recognizing that it was you stepping into empathy that literally unlocked all of those doors. Let's look at the third one. The third storehouse that you replenish is salubrious. So salubrious as a word, dictionary-wise, basically means favorable, promoting well-being, really promoting wholesomeness. And that was, doing the salubrious lay of the land examination with the intention of building up and replenishing the stores, the storehouses. I started looking at what was really favorable to me. The huge stuff that emerged in the last 3 years that was very favorable to me and to each one of you here, and through you and through me, it has been very favorable to so many others, is that I was able to recognize the power of online and that dialogue about offline, meeting face to face, and then having this discussion is so much better. And therefore delaying actually having the conversation with that excuse of when we meet in person, we'll go over it. That just dropped, it just dissolved. And that was hugely favorable for us to move things forward much faster than we were doing before. So whilst the world around us, from my perspective, was locking down, there were these gates of manifestation that were opening up faster and wider and bigger and stronger gates. And it was happening with me, and I was able to share it, so it started opening for others also. And even something like another wave of Corona and another wave, all of us together was simply able to use the tool of acknowledgement. It was hugely favorable in terms of really creating some form of harmony within our physical presence. giving a chance for those of 124 trillion cells that weren't impacted by the pandemic or whatever other forms of ailments or illnesses or aches and pains we might be going through. And it truly did start promoting health and well-being, having people recognize the wholesomeness within. I believed in full spectrum well-being. And 2010 is when I got that understanding. And I would talk about it, and people would nod and smile and felt good. They didn't know how to do it for themselves. By simply following through what we were discussing week after week, not just as Q&A or just as a banter, but with some practical ways in which you can implement this for yourself. What I was covering, it was enabling people to know that they are wholesome. If one thing is being difficult, there are many others that are opening up that actually are deeply, deeply enriching. And that coming together amplified our ability to stay in our center, acknowledging both the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, knowing that simply by acknowledgement, that which doesn't serve us simply dissolves, goes away. By using acknowledgement, that which does serve us multiplies. And all of this occurs in a regenerative way. So it gets anchored within you that which doesn't serve you is going to do, all you have to do is acknowledge, and it's going to dissolve. That which does serve you, all you have to do is to acknowledge and not get fearful about, will I remember for this to continue going forward? So I'm just sharing what occurred for me, and many of you were a part of that journey, so you can see for yourself how it impacted you. But don't compromise on filling up your storehouses as you examine each of these ways. You don't have to worry about how your storehouse is having an impact on restoring that former glory. But in your acknowledgement, in you actually recognizing what was shifting and changing, you're already anchoring that, which you would call as glory, and it doesn't feel like it is former glory anymore. It actually, that vibration comes into your presence. And that's why former glory is restored. And your storehouse remains full of all of these amazing acknowledgements. It is so exciting. This pearl of wisdom is so exciting in terms of what it starts to deliver. Let's look at the fourth one. The fourth storehouse is the thriving storehouse. And here, as you're examining the lay of the land, you're really examining what is thriving, something that's prosperous, it's growing, it's flourishing. And it's doing so vigorously. So, what I saw for myself as I was looking back in the last 3 years? I saw that before I started thriving on all cylinders, I was in fact engaged in different levels of depth and expansiveness on my own personal growth. And in what I was doing and sharing in those times, it was actually boosting my own resilience and my resolve that every moment is a moment that provides a very unique leverage. If we are able to harness that power of each moment, the leverage is guaranteed. And if I get clearer even about what I intend, then that unique leverage enables that intention to come into reality. And that is what is at the foundation of resilience. And that's what I saw happening with me as I was sharing with you each time. My partnership with the divine blossomed in ways beyond what I could even have predicted. There were times where so much had changed just in terms of what was going on externally and the way the statistics were being reported and stuff, that I literally had to just simply show up, trusting that what's going to come through without any mental preparation. I was trusting what was going to come through was exactly spot on for the environment that we were all experiencing at that time. And that in doing so, it was going to transform our own internal terrain to further enrich our own immune systems. I mean, as I sometimes listen to these pearls of wisdom, and I'm converting these into podcasts, and as I listen to those podcasts from time to time, I'm very present to how precise and clear they are, should anyone wish to implement them. It reminded me of my corporate days. You know, if I knew what I wanted to teach people or coach people about or mentor them about, I would spend days, weeks sometimes, creating systems and structures like a workbook that people could implement. And there we were, generating multiple workbooks in each of the sessions, and we've continued to do so. And that came from that particular time that we all have experienced. And it was a thriving storehouse that was being replenished. It was in that storehouse replenishment that I understood that survival is taken care of. So we could actually, as a strategy, adopt thriving. And when we create and develop new strategies, what if we took thriving as the context of that? What could be possible? And I started implementing that. I developed a very nuanced understanding of, like the indigenous elders often talk about nature being a master healer, animal totems. They are also healers. Runes in terms of rocks and crystals as well, being amazing healers. And Sunny, you were there. I've met you several times that I would travel to Los Angeles, and I was doing it each month. And one of my dear friends in Los Angeles introduced me to the crystal family that has the most amazing collection of crystals. And you'll be literally had to ring them up. And if the family knew you, they would allow you to come in and see their crystals. And some of them they were ready to sell. I would go to LA and I would come back with a collection of some of the most unusual, powerful, potent crystals of varied sizes. Until, of course, that was not going to happen anymore. And the lockdowns had begun. But I was in doing the thriving storehouse replenishment. I saw how enriched I was in what had occurred. And I also saw that when I got into a little bit of a rhythm, that, okay, I'm going to order these crystals, and next month I'm going to pick them up. I wasn't enjoying the power that each of these crystals were bringing to my home. And there I was, not able to go and order it to be delivered the next week. I started really understanding these amazing beings. They were my companions for a whole year, or 12 months or something, or 18 months even, of being in lockdowns. They were my companions. I got to see the power of crystals. I got to understand the wisdom that they hold. I got to share that with all of you. And that was very much a thriving experience. Firing on all cylinders became thriving on all cylinders. And the power tool of acknowledgement started being applied to how that situation was in fact causing me to thrive, feel prosperous, feel that I'm growing, flourishing, and doing so vigorously. Experiencing personal growth, boosting my resilience, and sharing that with great generosity with everyone who started to become a part of our soul family. That came from boosting the thriving storehouse. You will have your own stories. And don't just stop at the last 3 years. I'm using last 3 years as a way of connecting how these storehouses got replenished and what they did in terms of the impact, not just on my life, but of your lives, those of you who were a part of those times with me, and through you and through me, and through Facebook and other media, YouTube. It had an impact on the lives of others. I remember when I took on that particular apartment, spirit guidance to me was, this is the perfect place. Stay there, because we wanted you to have a place that overlooks the forest. Because in 9 months, you're actually going to create, they said something like 29 years worth of body of work. And I'm working with some editors right now, taking some of this material that I have shared with you, and we've clocked up 182 books from the material that I shared during that time. I mean, it's like beyond anything I could have even planned for. Absolutely thriving. Deeply enriching. And, everything, it's like I talk about the innate vibration really counts for something. The innate vibration of creating this body of work was collaborative co-creation of coexistence, really having people get into the realm of miracles, where they were consciously recognizing what's making their heart sing. That was the originating intent of this body of work. And that's the energy signature that will spread as this body of work goes out. Thriving galore, regenerative in terms of wherever people are at as they engage with this body of work. Let's look at the next one. I get very carried away and I'm just seeing the time here. The fifth one, the fifth storehouse is the optimistic storehouse. Optimistic is hopeful, confident about the future. As an optimist, we often see the positive side of things. And there's an expectation that things will turn out well. And that in itself gives optimists quite a unique skill and ability to actually make good things happen. They start to recognize what a manifestor they are. And that manifestation ability continues to multiply. This is a fabulous one. When you look at your optimist storehouse, and this is exactly what is playing out. If I just looked at the last 3 years alone, not only was I wearing the optimist shoes, I was with care and love and empathy, helping people rise above wherever they are at and find their own optimist shoes, if you like. And each week, with the guidance that was coming through for you to work with, you were, unbeknown to you, really replenishing the optimist storehouse. And that in itself anchored the glory of where you're at. And your former glory didn't feel like it was ever lost. It might have been shaken a little bit, but you anchored it, it remained in place. What I loved about this work, this particular Pearl of Wisdom, and doing a zoom in over the last 3 years and then going to 5 years, was that the last 3 years was so wholesomely enriching and so nuanced in the gifts that it kept, that have continued to regenerate, that when I looked at what occurred the last 5 years and the last 10 years, I was able to notice these nuanced experiences that enriched me as an optimist, that otherwise I wouldn't even have noticed. You know, so as I was looking at the last 10 years, and I looked at, you know, that choice that I made about going to Bali, and then choosing to step out of Bali and going to Wall Street for a period of 18 months. Rather than find those times as times where so much of my time got wasted, I actually saw that I was always meant to be a bridge, you know, between wherever people were at to where they could be at, knowing that every experience in their world, in their life, up to that point in time, the good, the bad, the ugly, of the and the beautiful, had all come together to enrich them, nurture and nourish them. And that emerged from understanding the nuances of the learnings I got for when I was in Wall Street, coming from a spiritual place. How many spiritual awakenings I went through whilst I was there for 18 months, in and out of Wall Street, shunting between Wall Street and Bali, complete extremes. And I'm sure, I know for a fact, certainly with some of the Wall Street people that still continue to engage with me, that it has transformed how they are looking at deals. It has transformed the kind of deals that they are allocating this powerful resource of money towards. Many were greatly impacted by these times that we went through with the level of uncertainty and how they were operating from certainty. Optimism was like a seed that got planted so they could look pessimism in the eye, look at devastation in the eye, acknowledge it fully, and know they're still here. Their heart is still beating. There is a miracle here. This woman, Mynoo, used to talk about that. Oh, yes, I can see it here and I can see it there. They would regroup and move forward. It's a pretty amazing collection of stories that I get to hear from how people implemented some of this stuff that I shared with them, you know, well before the pandemic. So it was pretty amazing. It got me to examine it with that nuanced lens, if you like. So do this for yourself. Look at the last 3 years and then go to the last 5 and the last 10 and so on. Now, every time you go in, when you're working with this Pearl of Wisdom, when you're going in and saying, okay, I'm going to go in and look at this optimist piece, your intention is clearly declared. You are replenishing the optimist storehouse, which basically means you have these storehouses that are full of restorative choices that you have pulled out of your own experience. So your cellular awakening and remembrance is pretty high. In the toughest of situations, you can dip into any of those storehouses and continue to enrich your presence, which in turn creates a very enriching experience of living your life. Coming alive is at the click of a finger and at the blink of an eye, because your storehouses are full. Former glory is a given. It's not former anymore. That's why you restore it so readily. It is here. And you start experiencing the glorious grandeur of your presence. You become totally and completely comfortable in that presence. The sixth storehouse is the rejuvenate storehouse. Rejuvenate is giving you energy or vigor. It's revitalizing youth or youthfulness again. And it literally does so with vigor. And it brings about us, it sort of stimulates and uplifts you. And it does so with vigor and with youthful vibrancy. And even just examining what is it that did that for you in the last 3 years. You're actually building a rejuvenating storehouse of very real things that occurred with you. The fact that it can occur with you in the face of some seriously challenging stuff that was playing out, not just for you, but for the world at large, you can literally step out of any situation. The seventh storehouse is the educative one. Mm-hmm. I wanted to call it the illumination storehouse, but I never edit the words that come through. It says educative. Educative isn't insights. It really is instructive. So in the storehouse of educative storehouse, you've got a whole collection of very instructive actions that you can implement. And in doing so, there is a natural form of growth of you that starts to occur. You feel that you've learned something. You feel you've grown as a result of that. You start recognizing and anchoring, the meaningfulness of whatever it is that you are dedicating your time and energy to. That in itself transforms the health of the brain function and the health of any cells that might have bought into the story of aging, for example. Because vast majority of your cells are no more than 18 months old. And you can become your own instructor on how you can revitalize yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally. I mean, my God, this pearl of wisdom, I see why Restore is a pearl of wisdom. Because each pearl creates a world. That's a world that delivers to everyone. And by examining it in such depth for yourself, through you, you're able to bring forth in a very authentic, anchored way that former glory is not former anymore. That glory resides here and now. And that is the vantage point from which you go forth and multiply. That is a vantage point from which you amplify your own vibrations. That's the power and impact of Restore as a pearl of wisdom. Over to you, Sunny.
Oh my goodness. Guys, I'm going to just go through the words really quickly because I sometimes don't get them all. Radiance, empathy, salubrious, thriving, optimistic, rejuvenate, and educator. And, I get the educator. It is different than the illumination, Mynoo. I really love that. And each of these guys, if we can go through and examine, while you were speaking, Mynoo, I could feel the opportunity to restore my former glory where I feel like maybe it's done, it's over, it was in my 40s or 20s or whatever. So I so appreciate the opportunity to be able to reactivate that. And I circled and highlighted cellular awakening, because I can feel, as you were speaking, each of these: salubrious, thriving, optimistic, the opportunity that my body and my youthfulness, my vitality, my vigor to come back with knowing, as I give the gratitude for those 3 years, those 5 years, where was I thriving? Where was I optimistic? Where was I the educator? And I can even feel it now. I'm getting chills to just be able to feel the strength, the power, and the opportunity to bring myself very current, and just expansive possibility going forward. Oh, it chokes me up. So thank you, Mynoo, and thank you everyone for joining us and our 98th phenomenal Pearl of Wisdom. And blessings to all of you guys. And thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, Mynoo Maryel, for what you have brought to us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And it is nearly 3:30 in the morning here in Geneva. I'm going to catch some more sleep now. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Oh, namaste to all, especially to you.